The oppressor's greatest power over black people is the fact that they've colonized our minds to blindly believe whatever lies they tell us. Therefore, most of us rarely, if ever, questions the validity nor fact check anything stated by them. To emancipate ourselves from white mental slavery, we must research all facts and start critically thinking for ourselves. Let's do so. Although it's a fact that Caucasians share more physical characteristics with the white Neanderthals of ancient Europe than they presently do with we melanated Africans, they've conditioned the world to ignore this fact and have totally separated themselves from the Neanderthals of ancient Europe and instead claim themselves as being descendants of we African Homo sapiens. Whenever those who clearly despises us makes the claim that they came from us, it's always a lie that somehow benefits themselves. They've told that lie for so long until many black people began repeating it as being a fact. That was the intended purpose of why they repeated the lie so often. Repetition makes lies appear as more truthful. It's what's known as the illusory truth effect. And because we've been brainwashed to revere them, many of us were glad to accept the narrative that they came from us. Many of us were, in fact, elated by it. This is because most of us don't know true history. If we did, we would have been insulted by that narrative. The narrative that all people came out of Africa has never been more than a theory that has now been scientifically debunked by DNA evidence. It is true that Homo sapiens came out of Africa, but only we Africans are the true Homo sapiens. What they hide from you is the fact that the true scientific term for all other groups is actually Homo sapiens sapiens. The word sapiens is stated twice. It refers to subspecies that evolved totally separate from we African Homo sapiens. Wikipedia described them as being modern humans that evolved from lower primates. Unlike those other groups that evolved from lower primates, Africans did not evolve from lower primates. We have instead always been Homo sapiens. Africans are the only true homogeneous human species, and the Darwin evolutionary theory chart does not apply to Africans. We are of man and they are of mankind. I realize that to some I might sound like a raving lunatic. Whenever a well-packaged web of lies have been sold gradually to the masses over many generations, the truth will seem utterly ridiculous and a speaker will seem like a raving lunatic. Nonetheless, those who know the truth must teach African proverb. We are Homo sapiens, which means homogeneous human species, and all other groups are subspecies that evolved from lower primates. This might be a bit of a disappointment to those of you that favored the premise that all people originated from Africa and spread out from there. However, this is now backed by scientific evidence that theory was untrue. According to two recent studies published in the journal Nature that looked at a DNA fossil hidden in the modern human genome, Africans are the only pure homogeneous species, and the Darwin evolutionary theory chart does not apply to Africans. Unlike Caucasians and the other groups that evolved from lower primates, Africans have always been Homo sapiens. These studies found that our chocolate-colored skin and hair type are the direct result of Homo sapien DNA. These studies also reveal that Caucasians are not African albinos, but instead inherit their skin color and their animalistic hair type from the Neanderthal DNA. Neanderthals are totally separate species. The implications of these findings are enormous. This means that the Caucasians are literally Neanderthals masquerading themselves as being the highest evolved African Homo sapiens. They falsely attach themselves onto we Africans in order to give themselves a Homo sapien origin. Like I said, whenever those who clearly despises us makes the claim that they came from us, it is always a lie that somehow benefits themselves. We Africans are the only true Homo sapiens. The name Homo sapiens means the wise humans. Homo is the Latin word meaning human or man, and sapien is derived from the Latin word meaning wise or astute. The name the wise humans is appropriate because Africans introduced science, writing, math, and philosophy to the world. Africans invented the wheel, the paper, the calendar, the concept of 24 hours in a day. Africans are the first to build in stone and the first to smelt metal. The world's oldest university, library, manuscript, oldest standing kingdom, oldest human prosthetic, encyclopedia, mathematical tools, medical journals are all located in Africa. And long before the Europeans invaded Africa, it was Africans that civilized Europe. Africans also introduced shaving, the use of toothpaste, perfume, fragrance, deodorants, and even introduced the daily bath to Europeans. And in spite of cultural traumas wrought by the injustices of white racism and slavery, most inventions that revolutionized the world were either invented by black people or were directly inspired by early inventions by black people. Without black people, we wouldn't have the light bulb. I know. You were taught that Thomas Edison is responsible for lighting up the world. But in reality, no companies purchased Edison's light bulb because it was deemed not efficient enough. It lasts only a few minutes and lit very dimly. The inventor whose light bulb was purchased, mass-produced, and that was dispatched around the world to oversee its installation was in fact an African inventor named Lewis Latimer. Therefore, in reality, the true narrative is that it's a black man who lit up the world. You're functioning based upon lies. Without black people, we wouldn't have airplanes. I know you were taught that the first aircraft was built by the Wright brothers. But the truth is, before the Wright brothers patented their light bulbs in 1909, a black man named Charles F. Page had already invented, patented, and flown an airplane 3 years earlier, in 1906. Without black people, we wouldn't have the automobile. I know, you've been taught that Henry Ford is the inventor of the first automobile. It was actually an African-American inventor and carriage company entrepreneur named Charles Richard Patterson that built the first automobile. It was released in 1905 and sold for $850. It had a 4-cylinder Continental engine. C.R. Patterson was forced out of business by Henry Ford in 1939. Through their monopoly over information, the white society has manipulated millions to believe that most inventions that revolutionized the world were invented by Caucasians, and manipulated millions to perceive black people as being the leeches of society that haven't invented much throughout history. Creating and sustaining this perception aids the white society in maintaining its social capital and social dominance over black people. But the truth is the exact opposite for what they've manipulated millions to believe. Without black people, there would exist no internet, no cell phones. We wouldn't have cameras and microphones on our cell phones. We wouldn't have the accurate weather forecasting system. We wouldn't have the cataract laser removal scope. There would be no emails, no GPS, no hearing aids, no touch-tone phones, no caller ID, no home surveillance security system, no home game cartridge, no steam engines, no traffic lights, no elevators, therefore no skyscrapers, no air conditionings, no modern PC, no 3D movies, no central heating, no refrigerators, no helicopters, no washing machines, no lawnmowers, no dryers, no refrigerated trucks, no blood banks, no fiber optics, no nanotechnology, no female sanitary pads, no bathroom tissue holders, no pencil sharpeners, no door knobs, etc., etc. Africans have enriched the lives of nearly every person on this planet through our many inventions. And finally, here's one more hidden fact about Africans that might explain our many great achievements. According to geneticists, the higher a group's DNA series, the greater probability of genius exists within that group. In 1996, 15 genetics from 9 different universities around the world tested a DNA series of 136 people from around the world. They first tested the apes, When they tested the orangutan, they found it had 3 DNA series. When they tested the gorilla, they found it had 4. When they tested the chimpanzee, it had 5. They then studied Europeans, England, Germany, France, Russia, Spain, and they found that Europeans have 6 DNA series. They tested all others around the world also have 6 DNA series, except Africans. Africans have 9 DNA series. Africans therefore had the highest probability of genius existing within our group. These findings were published in a manual entitled The Global Pattern of Linkage Disequilibrium of Modern Human Origin. Your perception of reality is an elaborate white deception. In the age of information, ignorance is a choice. You can Google everything I said and find the information right in front of your face. The white society writes our narrative, and they denigrate our narratives to maintain their social capital, social dominance. According to social science, perception is more important than reality for controlling society. So the white society creates the perception of white superiority, and that perception gives them their social capital and social power over black people. It's time for us to learn the truth. Wake up.